Time now for our weekly news review, and we're joined via Skype by the Daily Dispatch editor, Sbu Ngalwa, who joins us now. Sbu, thank you very much for your time. I think let's start with the all-important land summit that took place over the past weekend. Of course, those recommendations now go into the NEC of the governing party that sits this weekend. Talk to us about what came out of those, and what's your sense, given what the opposition parties are saying in Parliament, that this is all just an election gimmick by the ruling party?
Good morning to you, Goli, and to the viewers at home. I think the starting point for me, I actually do not believe that it is a gimmick by the ANC. I'll take you back to December, to the 54th Congress. You must remember that the position of expropriation of land without compensation was fervently pushed by the so-called Zuma grouping of the ANC. And when they lost the main election, which is that of president, the one thing that they had was to fight and push as much as they could to achieve this particular, to make sure that this particular resolution is passed. And yes, they did. And it also came at a time when almost everyone in the ANC, regardless of the factional divide, of which side of the factional divide they fell on, that they felt that then something needs to be done about land. I think what the Land Summit was about was actually the ANC trying to refine its own resolution, because you could ask anyone in the ANC, they'd give you a different definition or a different understanding of what exactly the resolution says. So I think this was an attempt actually to refine their own resolution on expropriation of land without compensation. And number two, to also deal with to also get views from experts and NGOs and other parties to actually, so the ANC, because as you know that there's the parliamentary process that is currently that is going to be taking place. So the ANC needs to go there with a concrete submission. So to get all views from all sides on what to do, on how to approach the land question, and more importantly, the issue of whether you amend the constitution or not, which was also dealt with at the summit.
And that's exactly the point I want to come to, because Section 25 of the Constitution has been a very big talking point. But you could sense in Parliament that the opposition leaders like Mmusi Maimane, like Julius Malema, now seemingly wanting to take on the governing party about whether or not it will actually amend Section 25. Of course, you will know that the EFF is very adamant that that particular section has got to be amended in line with the compensation element.
Look, there is a delicate political maneuvering that has to be done here, because on the far left or the extreme left, you have the EFF, which is pushing for radical land redistribution and the amendment of the constitution, and you have the ANC, which is also the governing party, and you have also the noise from your far right, from your AfriForums and the likes. So you have an ANC now which has to try and to be above all the noise and to be seen to be giving leadership, because if the current legal framework and the constitution allows for that, as some experts have been saying, and also as the ANC seems to have now realized, because now I think the decision that was taken is that the ANC is going to test Section 25 to see how far it can go in terms of implementing land reform without compensation, because there has been a view which has been expressed by many experts that the law currently allows for that. But I think inadvertently what this is, is also a realization and an admission by the ANC that actually it has failed to address the land question in the 24 years that it has been in power. That it wakes up on year 25 and says, now let's maybe see what the constitution allows, because it tells you that everyone, including most commentators, everyone was always mouthing about willing buyer, willing seller, until someone pointed out that there is no such a clause in the constitution.
Talk to me about, in fact, just the final word on this particular topic, Sbu, the apology now that is being demanded by traditional leaders for being called or referred to as tin pot dictators by former President Kgalema Motlanthe. What's your sense here? Should that apology be forthcoming, given what he said at that summit, that with the exception of the leaders from your part of the world in the Eastern Cape, others feel that this land land they own. They don't actually, they're not custodians of it on behalf of the people that they are entrusted this land with.
I think for me, Chloe, the issue of traditional leaders and an apology is actually secondary. Because I think what it goes into, the whole issue of communal land and the whole debate around land reform actually shows people, in fact, should show everyone that it is not just about farmland. It is also about urban land. It is about social housing in closer to workplaces, and it goes into agriculture. Now, the issue with the communal land is that, remember, when homelands came into effect, there were individual private title holders, particularly in this part of the world and in the Transkei. People who actually lost their land, and it all fell under one umbrella. What the government is not telling us is that actually they are individual and they are private land title holders, small holders in this land that is referred to as communal land. So for me, the feelings of traditional leaders are secondary. I think there's a bigger debate here rather than their own feelings. So it talks to all these aspects of land reform that we need to deal with, starting from communal land, agricultural land, and also the racialized land ownership patterns in this country.
Very quickly, Sbu, two subjects that we need to touch on very quickly. That's the issue of the AG's report on the state of health, financial health, that is, of the municipalities. Very, very dismal report coming out this week.
I mean, we in the Eastern Cape actually, of that 28 billion irregular expenditure, almost half of it, municipalities in the Eastern Cape. It actually, my view is that we become numb to these things because every year the AG comes out with the same report. We get shocked, we call for heads to roll, and nothing happens. And this issue, SANEF actually, incidentally, happened to be in Cape Town because SANEF had a meeting with the president yesterday, and the issue came up, and he actually says that he's of the view, he has called the Minister of Cooperative Governance, and he feels that they need to gather heads and around the table and deal with the issue of municipalities. And beyond it just being a talk shop, I don't know really what needs to be done besides the fact that it starts with who the ruling parties appoint to those positions. Because, I mean, you need not be a supporter of one of the DA or any other party to see actually where municipalities are performing. And actually the ANC must own that cadre deployment, nothing is wrong with cadre deployment, just deploy the right cadres to the right positions. Deploy people who are qualified and who can do the jobs to the right position. It's as simple as that. I don't think it's rocket science. I don't think it needs summits and more talk shops. It's just a matter of if it's a position of a CFO, get somebody who has understanding of finance or who has studied on the field. Simple and straightforward.
Just finally, therefore, the Northwest Premier, Supramao Mapilo, resigning this week, or should we say tendering his, his retired early. He's taken early retirement. Talk to us about what it is that you expect to come out of the NEC this weekend, given that the talking point might be this status of the provincial executive which he leads.
I think the reality is that, you know, that he had initially indicated his intention to resign, and then he dug in his heels, and then he spoke about himself in third person. The reality is that the situation had become untenable. There was no turning back. I think it had gotten to a point where he resigned or he was fired. I don't know how you can take early retirement from a position from a contract position, which is 5 years, which expires in a few months' time. But the thing is that the Northwest actually is a microcosm of what South Africa had become under President Jacob Zuma, where rampant corruption was allowed to thrive. As things stand, we understand that there are about 12 forensic investigations that are currently underway in the Northwest, and there are also millions that still go missing in all the provinces. You know, so it's not only about the Northwest. The Northwest might have been the starting point because of the tensions that were there and the protests, and maybe also the glaring corruption that was there. But the reality is that there is a lot of cleanup that needs to be done in this country. And President Ramaphosa has actually committed himself to that. But that's what he needs to be held to make sure that he delivers on that one and clean up the public sector.
Thank you very much for your time. That was Daily Dispatch editor Sbu Ngalwa.